Is this what you brought to my party? You call this a birthday gift? You're humiliating me in front of everyone!
What he didn't know was that within minutes discover she owned everything.
There is a specific sound that silence makes when it falls over a room full of 200 people. It's not just the absence of noise. It's the sound of a social contract breaking. It's the sound of a man realizing, in real time, that his entire world has just collapsed. Marcus Thorne thought he was the hero of this story. He thought he was the successful entrepreneur, the man of power, the one in control. He was wrong. In fact, he was the villain in a story he didn't even understand. He had just publicly humiliated a woman he claimed to love. He had just ordered security to remove her from his birthday party. He had just taken the most precious, personal gift she had ever given him, a gift that represented her entire history, and thrown it to the floor, stomping on it until it was ruined. But Marcus missed the most important detail. He missed the way the woman's spine straightened as she walked away. He missed the fact that her phone had been silent all night, not because she was unpopular, but because she was waiting. He didn't know that the woman he was treating like trash was the sole heir to a fortune that made his entire company look like a joke. He didn't know that the security he called would soon be taking orders from her. In the next 20 minutes, we are going to walk through exactly how a single evening unraveled a life. We will see how greed blinded a man to the truth standing right in front of him. We will see how a woman used her silence as a weapon more powerful than any scream. And we will witness the moment justice arrived, not with a bang, but with a quiet, terrifying precision. This is a story about money, yes, but it is not a story about getting rich. It is a story about the one thing money cannot buy, dignity, and the triumph of the human spirit. And what happens when you try to take that from someone who has nothing left to lose and turn on notifications before we dive deeper, so you never miss another unforgettable story. Now, let's go back to where it all began. Because to understand the explosion, we have to understand the fuse. 6 months before that party, Elena Ross was living a lie. But it wasn't a lie of deception, it was a lie of protection. To the world, she was a ghost, a quiet woman who worked at a small, struggling art gallery on the east side of Manhattan. Her job was mundane. She dusted frames. She cataloged invoices. She repaired damaged canvases with a steady hand and a patience that few people possessed. Her coworkers thought she was struggling. They complained about rent, about the cost of groceries, about the price of a coat. Elena listened. She nodded. She offered sympathy. But she never complained. She couldn't. Because while they were worried about making ends meet, Elena could have bought the building they worked in with a single phone call. Her grandfather, Richard Ross, was a legend in circles most people didn't even know existed. He built an empire on real estate, private equity, and a level of secrecy that made him invisible to the public. He was a billionaire many times over, but Richard was a man who had seen what money did to people. He had seen friends turn into enemies. He had seen family members fight over inheritance before he was even dead, and he was determined that Elena would never be a target. Never fall in love with someone simply because they discover how much money you have, he told her, his voice thin but certain. Because a man who loves your bank account will never see the woman standing in front of you. Elena promised him. She promised that she would live as if the fortune didn't exist. She would find someone who loved her for her heart, her mind, her soul, not her wallet. When Richard passed away, the truth came out in that sterile office. Arthur Sterling, the family attorney, laid out the reality. Elena was the sole heir, $40 billion, properties on 4 continents, a foundation that funded hospitals and universities. It was overwhelming, but Arthur had a suggestion. Take your time, he said. There is no rush to claim this publicly. Let the estate process quietly. Live your life. Test the people around you. If they are who they say they are, they will love you regardless. If they aren't, well, you'll know. Elena agreed. She decided to wait. She would continue her life as usual. She would pay her bills 2 days early. She would take the subway. She would wear her one good coat. She wanted to be sure. She wanted to be certain that the people in her life were there for her. especially Marcus. Marcus Thorne, a man who spoke constantly about ambition and success. He was an entrepreneur, he claimed, building a fintech empire, but those who looked closely might have noticed that his empire was built on debt and hype. He was obsessed with status, with being seen, with the appearance of power. And Elena was a problem. She didn't fit the image. She didn't wear designer clothes. She didn't attend the right parties. She didn't understand why anyone would care about networking when you could just be kind. And then there was Claire, a woman from Marcus's past who reappeared the moment his success began to gain traction. She came from old money, the kind that names buildings. She made no secret of her disdain for Elena. She made jokes about Elena's clothes, about her job, about her lack of ambition. And Marcus, he laughed. He told Elena it was just teasing. He told her to have a sense of humor. He didn't see the trap he was walking into. He didn't see that by laughing with Claire, he was failing a test he didn't even know he was taking. The night of the party, the air was thick with pretense. This wasn't a celebration of life, it was a display of power. Marcus had invited the elite of the city, CEOs, investors, celebrities. He wanted to announce his international expansion. An expansion that, unbeknownst to the guests, was on shaky ground. He needed this night to work. He needed to look successful to keep the money flowing. Claire spent the evening circling Elena like a shark. She made sure everyone noticed the woman in the simple dress. She made sure everyone noticed the small, plainly wrapped box in Elena's hands. "What could you possibly give Marcus?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. "He has everything. Surely you're not planning to embarrass him." Elena knew what was happening. She could see the trap closing, but she didn't leave. Why? Because she needed to know. She needed to be absolutely certain. She needed to see if the man she loved would stand up for her, if he would say, "Stop. She is the most important person in this room." She was giving him one last chance, a chance to choose love over status. Then came the gift opening. Marcus, fueled by champagne and the need for validation, decided to make a spectacle of it. He opened gift after gift: a watch from Switzerland, a car from a sponsor, a vacation to a private island. The crowd applauded. Marcus's ego grew with every clap, and then he reached for Elena's box. "And this is from my girlfriend." His voice was flat. He opened it. Inside was an old, leather-bound journal. It wasn't new. It wasn't expensive. It was worn with cracked spines and faded pages. But to Elena it was priceless. Inside that journal were the handwritten letters, business philosophies, and life lessons of her grandfather, Richard. For the past 3 months, Elena had spent every spare dollar and every waking hour she had finding a specialist to restore the binding, clean the fragile pages, and preserve her grandfather's actual handwriting. It was a piece of her history, a piece of her soul. It contained the wisdom of a man who built an empire with integrity. She gave it to him because it was the most valuable thing she owned. She wanted to share her grandfather's wisdom with the man she loved. Marcus stared at the journal. He looked at the room. He saw the confusion on the faces of his investors. He saw the pity in Claire's eyes. And in that moment he made a choice that would define the rest of his life. He could have held up the journal and told the story. He could have said, "This is the most precious thing I've ever received. It contains the wisdom of a legacy. It has love." He could have shut down the room with his dignity. Instead, he chose the room. He chose the laughter. "Is this really it?" he screamed, his voice cracking. "A bunch of old, dirty papers. Is this a joke? You think I want your grandfather's trash?" He turned to the crowd. "She brings me garbage. On the night I'm supposed to be announcing my expansion, she brings me garbage." "Marcus, please," Elena whispered, her voice trembling but clear. "It's my grandfather's life. It's all I have. I restored it for you because I thought you valued wisdom." "I don't want your wisdom," Marcus yelled. And then, in a move that would haunt him for the rest of his life, he raised the journal above his head and hurled it to the floor. He didn't just drop it. He threw it with all his strength. Then he stepped forward and crushed it under his heel, grinding the leather and the fragile pages into the marble. The sound of the journal being crushed was the sound of a relationship ending, but it was also the sound of a life beginning. Because as Marcus screamed for security, as the guards moved toward Elena, as the crowd held its breath, the doors at the back of the ballroom began to open. The laughter died instantly. The atmosphere in the room shifted from celebration to fear. Who were these men? Why did the air suddenly feel so heavy? Arthur Sterling walked into the center of the room. He didn't look at Marcus. He didn't look at the security guards. He scanned the room with the eyes of a predator looking for its prey. "Forgive the interruption," Arthur said, his voice calm and measured. "We are looking for the sole heir to the Ross Corporation." The room erupted in whispers. Ross Corporation, the real estate empire, the foundation. Someone near the bar dropped a glass. It shattered, but no one looked. Marcus, still blinded by his ego, stepped forward. "Who are you? What is this?" "I'm the one who called security," he pointed at Elena. "She's the one causing trouble. She embarrassed me. She brought me worthless trash." Arthur turned slowly. He looked at Marcus with a mixture of pity and disgust. "You asked us to remove her," Arthur repeated. "Do you have any idea who you are speaking to? Do you have any idea who you just humiliated?" Arthur pulled a document from his briefcase. He held it up. "This is the last will and testament of Richard Ross. It names the sole heir to a $40 billion estate. Her name is Elena Ross." He turned to the crowd. "This woman," he said, pointing to Elena, "is the owner of this building. She is the majority shareholder in the funds you investors are trying to access. She is the benefactor of the hospitals you claim to support." He turned to the crowd. "And you," he said, looking directly at Marcus, "just publicly humiliated the most powerful woman in the city. You just destroyed a piece of history that was worth more than your entire life." The room exploded in chaos. People gasped. Investors started backing away from Marcus. Claire's face went pale. She started moving toward the door. Marcus stood frozen. "No," he whispered. "That's impossible. She's poor. She takes the subway." "She takes the subway," Arthur said, his voice cold as ice, "because she wanted to see if you loved her for who she was, not what she had. And you failed. You failed spectacularly." Elena stood up. She looked at Arthur. "Thank you, Arthur, but I don't need them to know. I know who I am." She looked at Marcus. "And he knows who he is." Elena's voice was steady. She didn't need to scream. She didn't need to threaten. Her silence was more powerful than any shout. She looked at Marcus, the man she had loved, the man she had hoped would be different. "I understand now," she said softly. "You don't love me. You love the idea of me, and that idea didn't fit your narrative." The fallout was immediate. Within hours, the story was everywhere. Not because Elena told anyone, but because the guests themselves were terrified. They didn't want to be associated with a man who treated a billionaire like trash. Investors pulled their funding. Partners canceled contracts. The expansion Marcus was supposed to announce was dead on arrival. His company, built on sand, collapsed under the weight of his own arrogance. Marcus tried to call her. Her number was disconnected. He went to her apartment. She was gone. He went to the gallery. Her coworkers wouldn't even look at him. "She resigned," they said. "She's gone, and honestly, good riddance." Marcus was alone, truly, utterly alone. The friends who had laughed with him, they vanished. The partners who had encouraged him, they were the first to distance themselves. For weeks, Marcus lived in a nightmare of his own making. He lost his company. He lost his reputation. He lost the only person who had ever loved him unconditionally. And the worst part, he couldn't blame anyone but himself. He had been given a choice: love or status, dignity or approval, and he had chosen wrong. Desperate for answers, Marcus began to dig. He went to the library. He searched public records, and there it was, the truth. Richard Ross, the billionaire, the philanthropist, the man who had raised Elena after her parents died. He saw photos of Elena with her grandfather. They looked happy, loved. And then he saw the date of Richard's death. It was recent, very recent. Elena had been grieving. She had been mourning the loss of the only family she had. And instead of comforting her, Marcus had been planning a party. Instead of supporting her, he had been demanding she fit into his world. He read about the Ross Foundation, about Elena's plans to expand education initiatives, about her commitment to helping young artists. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was stepping into her power, and she was doing it without him. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He hadn't just lost a girlfriend. He had lost the opportunity of a lifetime. He had lost the chance to be part of something real. 4 months later, Marcus found her. He didn't call. He didn't show up at her office. He waited for her at a park where he knew she volunteered on weekends. When she appeared, he felt his heart stop. She looked different, not in her appearance, but in her aura. She radiated confidence. She radiated peace. She was no longer the woman who apologized for taking up space. "Elena," he said, his voice trembling, "please, I need to talk to you." She stopped. She didn't run, she didn't scream, she just looked at him. "Marcus, what do you want?" Her voice was calm, detached, and that hurt more than anger ever could. Marcus fell to his knees. "I'm sorry, I was stupid, I was blind, I love you, I've always loved you. Please give me another chance, I'll change, I'll be better." He begged, he pleaded. He promised to change his ways, he promised to be the man she needed. Elena listened. She waited until he finished. And then she asked him the one question that mattered. "Marcus," she said softly, "if I had walked into that ballroom as a poor woman, if I had no fortune, no lawyers, no power, would you be here right now? Would you be apologizing, or would you still be laughing with Claire?" Marcus opened his mouth. No sound came out. He tried to speak, but the words wouldn't form, because he knew the answer, and she knew the answer. If she had been poor, he would never have apologized. He would have walked away. He would have found someone else to mock. His apology wasn't about love. It was about loss. Loss of money. Loss of status. Loss of power. "I thought so," Elena said. Her voice was gentle but firm. "Real love doesn't require proof of importance, Marcus. Real love protects. Real love respects. And you failed that test. You failed at the moment you chose their laughter over my dignity. You failed at the moment you crushed my grandfather's memory under your foot." She turned and walked away. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. She had her answer, and so did he. Marcus sat on that bench for hours as the snow fell around him. He was alone, and for the first time in his life, he understood the true cost of his choices. Elena went on to do incredible things. She used her inheritance to fund education, to support artists, to build a legacy her grandfather would be proud of. She never forgot the lesson of that night. She never forgot the value of dignity. And Marcus, he lost everything, but in losing it he found something else: humility. He took a modest job. He started volunteering. He learned slowly and painfully what it meant to be a good person. He never got the girl. He never got the money. But he got a second chance to be better. And that, perhaps, is the only redemption any of us can hope for. This story isn't just about a billionaire heir. It's about all of us. How many times have we been treated as less than we are? How many times have we been asked to shrink ourselves to make others comfortable? How many times have we stayed in situations that drained our spirit because we were afraid to be alone? Elena's story teaches us that our worth is not determined by others. It is not determined by our bank account, our job title, or our social status. Our worth is inherent. It is built into our very being. And no one, no matter how powerful or influential, has the right to take that away from us. If you have ever been in a situation where you had to choose between your dignity and someone else's approval, I want you to know this: you are not alone. And you made the right choice. Walking away is not weakness. It is the ultimate act of self-love. So I ask you this: what is one thing you have done recently to protect your own dignity? Or, if you've been on the other side, what is one lesson you've learned about recognizing your own worth? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with a friend, a family member, or anyone who needs a reminder of their own value. Hit that subscribe button for more stories of justice, resilience, and triumph. Remember, true wealth is not in what you own. It's in who you are when no one is watching. Stay strong, stay dignified, and never ever let anyone break your spirit. Thank you for watching.